The U.S. will have to send their sons and daughters exactly the same way as we are sending their sons and daughters to war, and they will have to fight because it's NATO that we're talking about, and they will be dying. The U.S. will have to send their sons and daughters exactly the same way as we are sending their sons and daughters to war, and they will have to fight because it's NATO that we're talking about, and they will be dying.
Here is something that the political establishment and propaganda media don't want you to know. Ukraine's President Zelensky has just banned yet another political opposition party, one that questioned his legitimacy as president, and used Ukraine's Department of Justice to mandate the seizure of this party's members' assets. Now, this is just the latest of Zelensky's actions to do this sort of thing. He began banning major political opposition parties in 2022, when he also started banning TV channels that were associated with his political opponents. And he took over total control of Ukraine's largest television networks, now controlled by their government. Now, Zelensky's presidential term ended on May 20th. He canceled elections in the name of martial law, suspending Ukraine's constitution so that he could stay in power. Now, defenders of Zelensky will say, hey, Ukraine is in the middle of a war. They can't have elections. Just stop for a moment and think, if we accept that excuse or criteria for suspending the Constitution and canceling elections, then we should presume that leaders in our own country and our own establishment media will also use this same excuse and rationale when they suspend our Constitution and our elections, since we too are at war with Russia and China. If you think this sounds crazy, look at what's already going on. They've already started conditioning us to accept a dictatorship by rationalizing their own use of our Department of Justice to target President Trump and other political enemies in their efforts to stay in power.
There he is, the boss dog. I can't believe he's walking on the way out. Normally he only walks on the way back. Anyway, let's get to it. Watching the world burn, watching the world burn. March 2nd, 2025. Let's get into it. Before we get into the video, I'm just doing a roadway hike here. Got up too late. I was doing my montage. If you didn't see it, nowhere man, keep listening. Nowhere man. Anybody able to tell me what the hell they're doing here? They've been digging on this, I think, for 2 years, man. I thought they were making it into a dump, you know, for probably, you know, but does it take 2 years? And I mean, the dirt piles just kind of move around. I mean, maybe it's a practice facility for people to learn how to use heavy equipment. I don't know. It doesn't make any sense to me. Anyway, let's talk about that fiasco at the White House. a lot of little background there. That meeting had gone on for about, I've heard 40 minutes before the cameras were cut on. So you were just getting the tail end. And if you don't know how diplomacy works, the way it's supposed to work is, you know, all the formalities and everything are done ahead of time, you know, by the Secretary of State, you know, Marco Rubio and everything. And Zelensky showing up at the White House is just a formality to sign the paperwork. I swear, some people here in Florida, they need new vehicles, man. Florida man, Florida man. There's a Florida man story. A guy was riding around on a bicycle checking people's IDs in an apartment complex to see if they were illegal aliens. He's in jail now, only in Florida. But so anyway, it was just supposed to be a formality where Zelensky comes in, signs the paperwork, and then they have a nice lunch together. Well, Zelensky did the change up on it. Somebody got to him and they said, no, you know, you need to demand this and demand that. And Trump was going to have none of that. I mean, he's like, we already had a deal. What are you talking about? You know, and so that's how that thing went off the rails. I just wanted to describe that to you. The next thing in the video I'm going to try to find is, if you didn't watch the Joe Rogan interview with Elon Musk, it's 3 hours long, but I mean, if you want to learn a lot about, you know, why I go off on Democrats. And Elon, he actually said it, man. He says they are traitors. And he was describing the whole Soros operation and how that was funded by by our taxpayer dollars. You know, we already knew that USAID was giving Soros money. But, you know, one of the things that I was always wondering about was, you know, of course, they were trying to overturn presidential elections at first, according to Elon. And then instead, they realized that the money is much better spent on local races, putting people in there to destroy the United States. And that's how you got all of these attorney generals that, you know, let people out of jail and don't prosecute criminals, and, you know, or mayors in towns, because all that money was funded by our taxpayer money. You got to watch the interview. If I can find it, I'll put it in the video. We'll get into the video here in just a minute, because I want to do some readings to you about Ukraine. You can see I'm out just hiking the dog here down the road to get him some exercise. Anyway, let's check out the planes up there. That is cool. We have a lot of planes that fly around in helicopters here in Central Florida. You know, there's no main airport up until you get up to Gainesville or down to Tampa, or, you know, out west or east. All right, let's get into the video. Found a great post by George Christian, very, very related to what took place. By the way, if you didn't know, Trump said Zelensky's not coming back to the White House and that Ukraine is just not ready for peace. So I guess he's just going to let them fight it out. Don't think that's going to go too good for Ukraine, do you? Anyway, it's up to the Ukrainian people. They're going to have to get him out of office, because Trump won't want to deal with him and Putin's not going to deal with him. So the war will just continue. Who knows how much longer Ukraine can last, but they've lasted a lot longer than I thought they could, even with us giving them all our weapons and money. And by the way, somebody quoted a figure of $350 billion, and then they said, no, it's a lot more than that when you take into account the military equipment. So we're probably into them for, you know, I don't want to say a trillion, but somewhere between 350 and $1 trillion. So anyway, breaking, the mask has slipped. Yesterday, Zelensky had a shouting match with real Donald Trump and J.D. Vance in the White House. For years, he was hailed a hero. Now he's exposed. Here's the history of the Ukraine and Zelensky you won't hear from the media. So this is an excellent thread. J.D. Vance asked why Ukraine wasn't thanking the United States for billions in taxpayer-funded aid. Instead of thanking America, Zelensky snapped, warning that the U.S. doesn't understand what's coming. That's when real Donald Trump cut him down. You don't have the cards right now. And anyway, Trump was right. Zelensky has never had the cards. He isn't some brave leader calling the shots. He's a desperate man clinging to power in a collapsing regime, propped up by Western money, weapons, and propaganda. And with that Ukraine losing the PR war, a real war, he's panicking. Just keep, we'll get going here. Do a little hiking while we're talking. Ukraine and Russia have been bound together for over 1,000 years. Kiev, Ukraine's capital, once the heart of Kievan, Russia, K-I-E-V-A-N, Kievan, Russia, I don't know what that is. The first great Slavic state laid the foundations for Russia itself. Ukraine's very name means borderland, which means the borderland of Russia. For centuries, it was an integral part of the Russian Empire, not some oppressed nation. Even during the Soviet era, Ukraine wasn't occupied. It was central to the USSR. Even Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev was Ukrainian. So, you know, if you didn't recall, I mean, what do you think the Ukrainians were fighting with when the war started in February of 2022? They were using Soviet weapons, because when the Soviet Union dissolved, the only thing they took back to Russia was the nukes. They left all of the, so, you know, Ukraine was an integral piece of the Soviet Union, if you didn't understand that. So it's not like, you know, they've been a separate country for many, many years. No. When the USSR collapsed, Ukraine became independent and Washington stepped in, not to help Ukraine, but to weaponize it against Russia. The US and NATO lied to Gorbachev, promising they wouldn't expand 1 inch eastward, yet NATO moved into Poland and the Baltic states. And then, of course, we also took Finland and Sweden here recently. So you can see how we were bringing NATO, and the goal was, of course, when Biden said we're going to bring Ukraine into NATO, that was when Russia invaded, just so you understand. And we got some videos here we might play. Ukraine was the ultimate NATO prize. The West poured billions into Ukraine, funding pro-NATO political groups, NGOs, and media to manufacture an anti-Russian state. In 2004, the CIA backed the Orange Revolution, overturning an election that favored a pro-Russian candidate. The real coup came in 2014. Ukraine's democratically elected president, Viktor Yanukovych, rejected an EU trade deal that would have destroyed Ukraine's economy. That was unacceptable to Washington, so they removed him via a manufactured color revolution. We've talked about that in previous videos. The so-called Maidan Revolution wasn't a grassroots movement. It was a CIA-backed coup, orchestrated by the officials of Victoria Nuland. So brazen was Washington that Nuland even caught on a leaked call, handpicking Ukraine's next leader before Yanukovych was gone. The violent mobs that took over Kiev weren't peaceful protesters. They were led by neo-Nazi groups like the Azov Battalion, groups that openly celebrate Nazi collaborators and wear the SS insignia. These same groups now receive Western weapons. Why do you think Russia keeps saying they're going to denazify Ukraine? They're not lying. The post-coup regime that banned Russian language, directly attacking millions of Russian-speaking Ukrainians in the East. That's when Donbass and Crimea said enough. Crimea had a referendum. Over 90% voted to return to Russia. The Donbass also voted for independence. The people of the Donbass rejected Kiev, but Kiev wouldn't let them go. Instead, they launched a brutal war on their own people, shelling civilians for 8 years. Where was the Western outrage? Nowhere, except at the start with the CNN story on the atrocities. And what about Zelensky? Whew. Man, I tell you, we got a lot of vehicles here in Florida where they got the lift kits and the huge tires. I can't imagine what the gas mileage is on those things. I bet they're only getting like 14 miles to the gallon. I don't see how you afford to drive a vehicle like that. I couldn't, not on my budget. So anyway, let's keep going. Covert action reported, let's read this whole thing again, because I lost my place. And what about Zelensky? Who is he? He's an organic leader who came from nowhere, or was he installed? Covert action reported that in 2020, Zelensky secretly met with MI6 head Richard Moore. Why would a foreign president meet with the UK's top spy instead of the Prime Minister? Instead of the PM? I assume he means Prime Minister. Is Zelensky a UK asset? According to reports, he's personally protected by the British, not Ukrainian security. When he visited the Vatican, he snubbed the Pope and met with the British bishop. Guess who else was there? Richard Moore from MI6 again. That's some coincidence. And by the way, that is for real. The MI6 does. How do you think Zelensky stays alive? You know, how do you think he was able to declare martial law and have no election? It's because he's protected by the British MI6. So that's for real. Let's keep going. By the way, Britain, as a result of the fallout with Trump, they voted to send, I don't know how many more billions of dollars to Ukraine. Good for the Brits. And then, of course, all over X, there's been all kinds of people from other European nations saying, you know, they're going to go in there with troops. You know, they're going to fund Ukraine. And I was cheering them on. I was going, yeah, Europe, you take it, you take over, man. We're done. We're done in the United States. At least I'd like to think we're done. I don't know what Trump's going to do at this point. Before politics, Zelensky was a comedian and actor, literally playing the president on a TV show. Then, with the help of Western PR teams, fiction became reality. His campaign was funded by oligarch Ihor Kolomoisky, who owned Ukraine's largest oil company and bank. Remember Burisma? Remember Hunter Biden over there getting the money? Remember Joe Biden telling the prosecutor or to fire the prosecutor, or if they weren't going to get the USAID money? You remember all that? All right, let's just keep going. Let's see. Like I said, it's a long thread, but I thought it was worth reading. Once in power, Zelensky's priority wasn't fighting corruption. It was making sure BlackRock and Western banks took over Ukraine's economy. Meanwhile, he funneled millions into offshore accounts and acquired a $34 million mansion in Miami, as well as a $3.8 million London apartment. Now, I don't know if he's going to be able to take advantage of that mansion in Miami, but if I were him, I'd be getting the hell out. And if you know, Trump lets him in, I don't know if the government can stop him from coming in the country. He's probably got from the Biden administration some sort of visa where he can come. But he better be moving in that mansion real soon. That's my philosophy. I mean, I don't know. Good thing our taxpayer money bought him a mansion, isn't it? All right, or the laundered money from the Democrats. In 2022, NATO had armed Ukraine to the teeth, and Kiev had amassed forces near Donbass. Russia had a choice: let Donbass face ethnic cleansing, let NATO turn Ukraine into a military base, or intervene. And we know the rest of the story. They intervened. They intervened just as other nations would in those circumstances. The media screamed unprovoked invasion, but NATO expansion, the 2014 coup, 8 years of war on the Donbass, and this war was provoked every step of the way. Ukraine was set up as a pawn. With Ukraine losing, Zelensky is being abandoned. Real Donald Trump told him, you don't have the cards. And he's right. The war was engineered. Ukraine needed Western intervention to win, and that would mean World War III. It's time the world wakes up to that reality. The war in Ukraine was deliberately provoked by the West. Zelensky is just another puppet. His time is running out. And Trump, he knows he wants peace, not another endless war. The question is, do you see the truth now? And then please share this thread and more analysis. Now, I had a couple other interesting, this is from Tucker Carlson, and I thought this was very interesting post by him. One of the most striking things about yesterday's Zelensky's press conference was Lindsey Graham's reaction to it. The two are old friends, but Graham disavowed him within the hour. It was more than just transactional disloyalty. It was scapegoating. Lindsey Graham knows what's coming. Over the past 3 years, with the tacit support of its Western patrons, the Ukraine government has committed a remarkable number of serious crimes. The Ukrainians sold huge quantities of American weapons on the international black market at 20 cents on the dollar. These weapons are now in the hands of armed groups around the world, including Hamas. Let's see, the Mexican drug cartels and forces now controlling Syria. God knows, with the pathogens in the American biolabs in their country, even U.S. intel agencies aren't sure. The Ukrainians have murdered a number of people. Remember Gonzalez? Remember him? They died. Biden administration let an American journalist die in a Ukrainian prison. Traitors. Traitors. Oh my God. Gonzalo Lira. Gosh, anyway, Gonzalo Lira. God rest his soul. The Ukrainians, a number of countries, the Ukrainians have also murdered a number of people in various countries in political assassinations and tried to murder others, including American journalists and a European head of state. This is all true, but it's all going to come out at some point. Better to start blaming it on Zelensky now. Now, I don't know if you remember, but there's been, I want to say, 2 assassinations that the Ukrainians conducted in Russia. It took high-profile figures. One of them was the daughter of that guy. But they were trying to kill him, and they ended up killing his daughter. That was a big deal. So yeah, they've been carrying out covert operations everywhere. Now this was Lindsey Graham. I thought this is what he said. This is actually posted on X. I couldn't believe it. To the hand-wringing Europeans who felt offended by President Trump rejecting being lectured by President Zelensky, be my guest to defend Ukraine from Putin. It's long past time for the Europeans to show they are capable of defending their own continent. They've allowed their militaries to be hollowed out, and when Europe speaks, no bad guy listens. I say this with great sadness. The last group of people that I will count on to defend freedom are the Europeans. That's from Lindsey Graham. If you didn't know, one of the accomplishments of Russia, which is unbelievable, I never saw it coming, was they demilitarized not only Ukraine, but NATO and the United States to a large degree. The amount of equipment and everything that Europe has shipped to Ukraine, they can't replace that. They don't have the industry. You know, we've got the military-industrial complex, but even we're going to have a hard time replacing all the equipment. You know that we only had like 500 ATACMS in the inventory, and good Lord, we gave them a lot of those to Ukraine, so all of our supplies are running low. This is GeoMan. I thought this was an interesting post. Ukrainian TG channel, Resident, R-E-Z-I-D-E-N-T, run by Postashenko and Zaluzhny allies, not run by them. Ukraine has found itself in a situation from which there's no way out. The war has led to catastrophic consequences. More than 1 million have already died. The losses are increasing every day. But the mobilization does not stop. Everyone who can be caught is sent to the front without proper training, without equipment, with no chance of returning home. Those who fight for years do not receive or cannot achieve demobilization or the promised payments or normal support. Corruption has destroyed the army from within. Western aid does not reach the fighters, settling into the pockets who have made their war their business. The government talks about new military aid, but on the ground, soldiers receive rusty, bulletproof vests and Soviet weapons. People are dying not because of a lack of courage, but because of complete chaos in management and the total incompetence in the leadership of the army, which is now run from B-A-N-K-O-V-A, Bankova. The economy is not just bursting, it's at the seams, it's collapsing. The official inflation rate of 12% is nothing more than a figure on paper. Real prices are growing many times faster. People are becoming poorer. Businesses are closing. Investments are leaving. There's no jobs left in the country, except for the army. The only thing that is growing is the tax burden, the war, and the war fees, which have long since lost their meaning. The last hope for Western support has collapsed. Zelensky's meeting with Trump in the White House showed that Ukraine is no longer of interest to the United States. the American president made it clear. There will be no unconditional assistance. Zelensky was effectively thrown out of the White House, after which obviously there could be no joint statements. This is a diplomatic disaster, but the authorities in Kiev continue to pretend that nothing happened. Now Kiev is left alone in the war. Europe is in no hurry to help. France and Britain are considering the possibility of sending troops, but only after a truce. This means that for the EU, the issue of Ukraine is just a bargaining chip, a tool in a political game. No one is going to save Kiev from itself, and Kiev is not ready to take a step towards peace. But Zelensky does not think about peace. He understands that as soon as the war is over, the people will act. What were all these sacrifices for? Why was our country ruined? Our economy destroyed? Hundreds of thousands of lives lost, millions really. There is no answer to these questions. Therefore, Bankova will drag it out until the last minute, as long as it's beneficial to itself. When everything finally collapses, the elite will flee, as happened many times before. Remember Afghanistan, when all of them bailed? You know, that government lasted one day after the pullout. Or it actually didn't even last that day. Remember, we lost 13 troops. What a fiasco. Democrats were responsible for the whole thing. And that traitor, Milley, Trump, activate him and court-martial him. He deserves. He's responsible for 13 Americans dead and countless Afghanis, or our Afghan allies, in the hundreds. That man, same with Fauci. I mean, I know you can't activate Fauci, but you need to let those attorney generals that are looking into him, give them the information. Fauci needs to go to jail. Or I always say face an international tribunal. Because he doesn't have immunity from the UN. So we can, what? You see that car? That was a badass car. I've seen a bunch of those today. A lot of people are buying really gas guzzling fast cars, you know. I guess here in Florida. Well, let's finish it up. Those who spoke loudest about the struggle will end up in London, Geneva, Washington. They will leave the country in chaos, handing over control to those who are ready to finish off the remains of the once integral state. But for now, the people have a choice. To demand peace means to demand the salvation of the country. There is no alternative. And I thought that was a very interesting post. And then I got one more. We're going to watch this video. Chuck Schumer. No good business operator would take a slash and burn approach that Doge is doing, because he's talking about all the cuts that Elon is finding in the federal government. And this is a cute comment. Should we tell him what Elon did to X? Remember, he cut 80% of the employees like the day one, or maybe in the first week or something like that. And X got better.
9/11 families deserve to be treated with dignity, with respect, not with the contempt we see from Doge. And no good business operator would take the slash and burn approach Doge is taking. People's Social Security benefits are also at risk. Their ability to see a doctor is at stake. Their ability to put kids in daycare is at stake. The longer Doge is allowed to rain chaos on the American people, the stronger the backlash will become.
It got a hell of a lot better without 80% of the workforce. So anyway, I just thought that was a cute post. All right, we'll finish off the video right there. It's gonna be nice and dark by the time I get back to the car. Get the dog out here soon. Get him walked. Peace out. Stay free. Look at that moon up there. Isn't that cool? Thought I'd get to the sunset here. That's why I do this walk. All the cattle in there. Got the cars going by here. All right, but let's get that moon back on the video. Isn't that cool looking? Hopefully it's getting on there. I love it. Anyway, I was just listening to that whole exchange with Trump and Zelensky on the radio again, because it's yesterday's video. Anyway, my favorite line was when the reporter goes, "What if Putin breaks the ceasefire?" And he goes, "What does she ask?" And she goes, she asked the guy next to Trump, or it might have been Vance. He said, she asked what if Putin breaks the ceasefire? Trump said, what if a bomb drops on your head? I was laughing so hard. What if a bomb drops on your head? I mean, that was the greatest line ever. And of course, then he went into the Russia hoax and the whole, you know, how he was set up by Hillary Clinton and Obama, and how shifty, he called him Shifty Shift again. And oh man, it was just, I swear that tirade, you got to watch if YouTube probably took down the video, but it's on X and it's on Rumble, because I did a montage with Nowhere Man by the Beatles on that whole thing. It was great. Anyway, I wanted to get this view on the video before I come up on a bridge here. And you know, one of the things that came to mind, you remember that scene in Independence Day when the president, or the actor being the president, I can't remember his name anyway, because he says, you know, what can we do to have peace? And that alien behind the glass goes, no peace. There can be no peace. Remember that scene? I think that's what Zelensky was saying for Ukraine. There can be no peace.
Мы, кстати говоря, готовы были бы предложить и американским нашим партнерам, когда я партнеры говорю, имею в виду только административные, правительственные структуры, ну и компании, если бы они проявили интерес к совместной работе. У нас, безусловно, на порядок, я хочу это подчеркнуть, на порядок больше ресурсов подобного рода, чем в Украине. Россия является одним из безусловных лидеров по запасам этих редких и редкоземельных металлов. Они у нас имеются и на севере, в Мурманске, на Кавказе, в Кабарде-на-Балкарии, на Дальнем Востоке, в Иркутской области, в Якутии, в Тыве. Это достаточно капиталоемкие инвестиции, проекты капиталоемкие. Мы с удовольствием работали бы совместно с любыми иностранными партнерами, в том числе с американскими. Да, кстати говоря, что касается новых территорий, то же самое. Мы готовы привлечь иностранных партнеров и так называемые новые наши исторические территории, которые вернулись в состав Российской Федерации. Там тоже есть запасы определенные. Мы готовы с нашими партнерами, в том числе с американскими, работать туда.